Mr. Silver, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I want to express my pleasure and honor in being invited to your very important association. I think for 27 very long years, you as a group and individuals reported the drama of Israel in its many phases, not always on its easy side, but always, I believe, in its full swing and changes and development. We are going to have a new peak of the very same drama, and some real decisions, or lack of decisions, taken at that period may affect very much the fates of the people living in this area, the people of Israel. We are very much aware of it. And while I have nothing to comment on the Ides of March, I can say about Passover that the career of the Jewish people started by withdrawing from Egypt. Yet, at the very same time, it was also an exodus from slavery to freedom. And it wasn't just a geographic direction, but a real social and national change in our life. I think like you, so are we, very alert to both what we hear with our ears and what we can see with our eyes. I can't complain there was a shortage of speeches in the Middle East, not only in Israel, but in Egypt and in Syria as well, creating a rather highly optimistic background for the visit of Dr. Kissinger. Yet, when you watch the situation, you can't avoid the feeling that in a parallel way, there is also a military preparation along the frontier, military deployment. And if I would be asked for the best advice how to negotiate, I would say let's hand it over to the diplomats and the leaders of the people without introducing an additive of a military movement. But this is just an advice. I believe basically Israel itself has returned to its own traditional way, some economic difficulties, a great deal of criticism of its own government that they always select in order to criticize, and so they will do in the future as well, and the rebuild of its security strengths, and a return, in a way, to a balanced judgment, self-confidence, and strong will. With this opening remark, again, I thank you very much for the introduction and reception. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I would say it is certainly early, and it's too early to judge. If you ask me objectively, is it possible to reach a settlement between Egypt and Israel and some other countries, other Arab countries and Israel? My answer is yes. But when you compare the positions announced, I don't know if taken, by the Egyptians, the Syrians, and other Arab nations and Israel, I would comment that the gap is still a very wide one.
Thank you. Unbridgeable.
Well, if the position declared by the Egyptians is their real and final one, I would have some doubts. If this is just a starting point, I would have some hopes.
Sir, I hate to chase you, but what is your opinion of whether it's their real position or whether they're ready to make some kind of a deal or agreement that both sides can live with?
Well, if there are two parts to it. If you ask about my opinion, I can give you my opinion on the Israeli position. If you ask about my appreciation, this is a sheer guess, which I wouldn't like to take. I believe that the Israeli position this time is based upon two alternatives, open and reasonable, and it offers Egypt a real choice. if the Egyptians have decided to go for a settlement. That's my opinion about the Israeli position.
The next question from Gidon Berli. Press reports from Egypt about new tension on the Egyptian front. Can Mr. Peres comment?
I don't know how do you describe tension. I'm aware of the fact that the National Security Council of Egypt met yesterday under the chairmanship of President Sadat, that the president has called his military leaders for a state of alertness. I know that there is a continuous and gradual Egyptian, shall we say, build-up on the Suez, but by the sheer build-up, you cannot really read the intention of it. It can be a part of a political maneuver. It can be more than that. But as I have said, we keep our eyes on that deployment, the military deployment, as well as we keep our mind open to the Egyptian propositions. It's certainly a double situation, not a single one.
Jim Lederman. How does the Minister feel about the Defence Treaty, and how does he feel about international guarantees of Israeli security? Mr. Peres.
Basically, I believe that an independent nation must have a military treaty with itself. It is the job of our own people to defend our own country and our own destiny. And I wouldn't look for anybody else to do it instead of us or to replace us. I believe that the very warm and frank, historically judging, the answer is yes. There were several occasions when the Egyptians fought and the Syrians didn't participate. There were other occasions where the Egyptians negotiated and the Syrians refused. So just in the way of precedents, you got it. You know, the Syrians, in spite of all their claim, on many occasions, they demonstrated a double reluctance to go to war or to go to negotiations. If you will take the history since 1948 to this very day, you will find sufficient examples to support an additional move. Yet, in spite of what I have said, if the Syrians would like to negotiate with Israel, we have never refused and we shall never refuse. But the character, both of the nations and territories and relations involved, are completely different on the southern part of the conflict than on the northern part of it. And I wouldn't use the same medicine for two different maladies.
Would Israel accept a promise of non-belligerency made by Egypt to the United States as fulfilling Israel's requirements for withdrawing from the Parsis and the Abu Rhodes oil field? Mr. Peres.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, Al-Aram is not yet an Israeli paper, and I wouldn't take his leakage on the Israeli position as a very serious one. I would wonder even about the description of the Egyptian position. To the point, as you have put it, I do not believe that this is the purpose of the Israeli part in the coming up negotiations. Let's speak really very candidly about it. A non-belligerency agreement or pact is, after all, a political move written on papers or described otherwise. Its value will always carry the doubts of any agreement of that sort, which is really, not a physical one or a geographic one, but a move in a political direction. If you are going to weaken it, may I say two things. A, why?